Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
I'm Fiona.
I'm Rich.
And we are back for part 2 of our Final Fantasy Extravaganza. I call this one Second Suggestion as a podcast title.
Yeah, if it's a Final Fantasy thing, you need to bolt a load of random words onto it.
There was a colon in there. There was a colon. It's fine. The first one was called First Foray. You know?
Nice.
So, you know, okay then.
First Foray Requiem. That's what you need.
Going back to change that straight away.
Dissidia, Final Fantasy Magnificent Podcast Blowout 2.
What does that even mean? I remember, so in Carlisle, where I'm from, during year 7 at school, which would be 11/12 years old, we had a medieval day, or medieval days.
Old times.
And waiting to have like some sort of weird memory where my own son turns up at my medieval days and a fucking time travelling thing. And it was weird. Like, I didn't know that this didn't exist elsewhere until I'd left Carlisle, but it was fucking brilliant. Like, and so you would like. I guess it's because it is a medieval city. There's a castle. There's like city walls. There's like, you know, a ye old town hall and stuff. It's pretty cool. You've got Hadrian's Wall from Roman times. And like, but we still call it medieval Carlisle. Ancient. I think a lot of places call themselves like ancient, don't they? Like ancient and royal, whatever and stuff. It's just like Carlisle's like just medieval Carlisle, and I'm like, well, there's like loads of, but there's like 2,000 years worth of history. Yeah, exactly. Idiots. So anyway, my point was that we had to dress up, and my mum at the time made me from scratch a jester's outfit, and I was called Faz the Frolic, and I was very proud of this outfit until we had to do Tug of War in it, and I just split my pants straight away.
But it's very in character.
Yeah, exactly. But our class won the Tug of War because we had just had some fucking hefty people, like, isn't it? It was like, you know, like recently in the World Darts Championship, they had Luke Littler, and it's almost like everyone's like, he's not 16, and it's like we had like Ryan Crampton, who was like, he's not 11. Fucking hell, like, it was like 9 foot.
Shit house.
It's like, get him at the back, anchor. So yeah, where was I going with this? Anyway,
I have no idea.
Medieval times, ye old times, and Final Fantasy times that we are in. It just, I don't know why that came to me in the brief break that we had. I'm spinning it vastly out of control here. So yeah, we're going to talk about non-mainline. Well, I've still got the word. Yeah, spin-offs. Thank you. Yeah, I was like not canonical, but they are. But I was like, that's not the right thing to say, is it?
Much like your Jester Tug of War was a spin-off of Medieval Times.
medieval days.
Medieval Times, the sequel.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Dissidia.
We went to Carlisle Cathedral, and this lady was dressed in old medieval dress, and she was feeding us old medieval food, and it was like, oh, here, have a sausage hedgehog they used to eat.
Have this medieval grapes.
It's the worst thing I've ever tasted. I was like, this is so true. I don't want to go back in time and eat shit. Anyway, so yeah, that story was a spin-off from my own reality there. Who's going first? Am I going first this time? It's well suited to my story.
Is it?
Yeah. Weirdly enough, yes.
All right.
So this one I'm going to have to like kind of read my notes verbatim because it is complex. So I played the remaster of Final Fantasy Tactics. So the original was out in 1997 for the PlayStation 1, and this was made for the PSP in 2012, I think it was, so quite late into the PSP's lifespan. I think did Vita come out 2012 or 2013 or something around that?
There or thereabouts.
It was, I think. Yeah, it was pushing it for the PSP, and it was a remaster, basically, that you can now get on mobile if you are so inclined to want to play this game. It is the original and also this version revered from a review point of view, and people absolutely loving this game. So, what is Final Fantasy Tactics all about? Have you played it?
I have got War of the Lion on my Vita, and there like a slightly different version on Game Boy Advance once upon a time.
So there's a Tactics
like
A2 or something like that.
Yeah, like the tutorial was you in a snowball fight or something like that. Yeah, so I think I might have that floating around somewhere as well. Yeah,
cool.
So the short answer is yes.
Yeah, cool. Fair enough. I'm just going to read out my notes because this is how my brain cannot comprehend without reading like a child about this. So, that's fine. Yeah, so the emphasis on tactics here. It is like the game is like 75 mini games of chess.
Yeah,
basically, except the chess. Each of your pieces can have up to 22 different jobs with different abilities and individual equipment. Mm. You can change your jobs regularly and gain XP on any of the jobs when you are allocated to them. Question from
I've got a very important question. When you change jobs, do you get a better spangly outfit and or more belts?
It's pixel, so you can't really see necessarily. It does make a really nice little sort of like you get like a flute music to change your job, nice. And it's like that's worth it. So
that's better than real life.
Yeah, I mean it is. Yeah, if you just getting changed one day and someone played a little nice floaty.
Freaked out. Is this like a women man difference? Would you guys just be like, my theme tune? And I'd be like, oh my god, where's the stalker?
all men long to get changed to flute song. It's a little known fact.
Album name there. So you
send Andre 3000 an email.
Needs more flute.
But you can mix the jobs almost in a way. So you could be like a quarter black mage, 3/4 monk. That is in. So
right.
There's like I said, there's 22 different jobs. That there are so many different combinations that you can do to play this game. So the chessboard that you play upon when you have battles, so basically you are going from place to place. The overworld map isn't as it is in Final Fantasy, or the old Final Fantasy games, where actually it's just a very linear map where it's like, here's your place, and then you press left and it'll move you to this place. And it'll flash red if it's a story, like battle, or it'll flash green if it's a random encounter that you want to use to level grind, or it'll be black if it's just a town that you can buy things at the shop. You can buy party members, so that sounds a bit strange, but it's almost like your main party member is the name of the protagonist that I've forgotten. I renamed him fast. Anyway, and you kind of get I guess what you call main characters who come and go with your party. But it's a bit of a weird one, really, because you will level them up. But the most important mechanic is the job points that you get. So every time you fight in a battle and get experience, and you actually have to do a physical activity in a battle to get that. So you can't just stand around a battle and do nothing, like as in. So there is a share all or JP all where you get an ability to do that, and you can actually share JP, job points or whatever, or you get job points for not doing much. But if you don't have that ability, then you would basically, like, a person's battling away, like they need to actually do something to earn that. But the most important thing is that they are earning job points, because you need to, I guess, effectively evolve the abilities of a job. I'm explaining this really poorly.
It's a strategy RPG with a really complicated set of classes.
So you can level up from experience, and you can level up from a job point of view.
Right.
Carrying on with my list of things that is like chess, except all party members can be either more magically oriented or physically oriented, and basically it'll say, you are, out of 100, you are 75 more magical and 54 more physical. So therefore you would dictate that person would pick up a job that can do magic, because they're better at doing magic. So, that's pretty straightforward, but it's another layer on top of. And then on top of that layer as well, everybody has zodiac signs. So... Just like
Oh no, sorry.
pointing at the sky.
The version of 12 that I played was the Zodiac Age. I think the original didn't have this, but they did also have a vague nod to zodiac signs and jobs that didn't actually, I don't think, matter that much. But maybe that's a.
So this is something that it doesn't necessarily matter that much. That you can kind of ignore them, but if you choose to ignore them, you have to be compatible with people in your party.
Sorry, hang on. Like back when you used to get like Cosmogirl and you'd read your horoscopes and it'd be like, oh, you're a Libra, so you should not go for those Aries boys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like
yeah.
every time I ever bought Cosmo.
The Beano, it said. Here's a slingshot.
I swear there was a joke about Mystic Meg in the Dandy one time, and I was like, just slightly too young to get it.
Oh, but that was probably good, because if you got it, you'd be like, why is Mystic Meg my dandy?
Yeah, I couldn't think about it too hard.
Why am I 17 and reading the dandy? So, yeah, you can basically match them with your own team, but also, so you have to have opposite. It's not even opposites across the dial. That you have a zodiac dial. It's almost like if one's over at 2:00, the one over at 8:00 is the one that you want to match with. And you have to learn that from the tutorial at the start, of which I spent 90 minutes on the tutorial. Like, isn't it? It is like, you are in there, you've got to do this tutorial. And even then I'm like taking vigorous notes, like sort of like, taking screenshots of what the zodiac cycle looks like. Because I'm like, I need to take that with me on my own mobile phone in 2023. Like, what did you used to do? Like, it's just mental. So all that, you have to consider all that, and then consider it for your opposition as well, which is then, and every single battle is randomly generated. So it's almost like you will get the same opposition as you go through the story generated battles, but they will not do the same thing every single time. So having all that to think about in every single battle kind of means that I would say that every single battle you spend probably half an hour to 45 minutes before the battle organising your people. And then on top of that, you have to level grind as well. So you've got to go back into random generated battles to be able to get jobs up to a certain thing. So, for example, the first job where you have a squire, and then you want to become a knight, but you have to learn some job abilities at squire level, such as the JP All, for example. So you fight as a squire level, but you'd actually be stronger as a knight, but you have to get to a certain level as a squire to do that in the first place anyway. But then you go, well, actually, but I also want them to learn parry, so that is so they can parry attacks. So you have to make them up to a level 2, whatever, like chemist or something like that.
It's like D&D multiclassing.
Yeah. I'm going to nod because you guys are quite, you guys know what you're talking about. Yeah. And I thought that you guys might be into that thing, because you're more au fait with it than I am. Whereas I'm like, this is a complete mind fuck to me. I'm like, oh my God. And I've put it in capitals, as you do, too many tactics. That's just sort of got in exclamation point.
When I played it, I remember doing that massive long tutorial and then being able to coast through a few battles. And then there was one point in particular that was like a colossal fucking difficulty spike. And I remember looking up at the time, and I think that might be the point where someone basically says what you just said about the Zodiac and how everything comes together. And it's like, actually, this is the final test of the tutorial. And if you haven't got it by now, you're not going to get any of the rest of the game. Is that about right?
Yes, it is, yes. I would think, if I'm going to gamble, and I think this is the battle, I mean, everyone has their own sort of, fights to pick and things. The one for me was Brigand's End, it's called. And I think it's like the 5th or 6th story battle in it.
Is it kind of like on a hill? I remember this being a hill and maybe not a river,
this is the thing that is in. So before I start talking about that, then like I was trying to say, that the chessboard isn't flat, so you have so many things to comprehend before you even get into a battle, and then you've got to build your party up. And then if you don't have a walkthrough, and I was trying to be sort of think, well, actually, I'm just going to see how it is, give myself a true reflection of how it would be if I didn't Google everything, before I actually do. You go into a battle and you can have up to 6 maybe, is it 6 people you could be in your party, depending on which battle it is. It's usually between 4 and 6 it is in the active battle. But then on top of that, you could have 6 to 8 opponents, of which they could be spread around the map, up a hill, over a river. They could have, you could have some archers at the back. You could have a mini boss in there as well. And there's also different ways that you can win a battle. So it could be like destroy all your enemies. So that becomes, right, okay, I've got to get around this map in a certain amount of moves. And I also need to get around this map in a certain number of MP points, for example, if I'm a magic user. And then you've got to be aware of being picked off by the archers who can hit you from afar. So where are you kind of hiding on the map? And then, and then it can also, in some of the battles as well, your party could be split in 2. So it could be you've got 2 people over here and 3 people over here. And you have to fail. You've got to do trial and error. Like almost every battle you've got to do twice at least, because the very first time you need to go, well, I know I need to start off. And because at the start of the battle, you can select where you sort of start your people. So, for example, you could say, right, my 2 ranged archers, for example, need to start on the left-hand side because I'm going to have to battle their archers that are over there. But then, for example, I might need to have my chemist and white mage, black mage over here because I know I need to do ranged attacks, but also I need to do quite a lot of healing. And then you might fail because you just make one wrong move, or in some circumstances, like about 3 or 4 times, I took the wrong people into battle. Like, I didn't know that I needed what I needed really until you get into it, and you're like, oh shit, I'm getting absolutely picked apart by these different types of people. But you don't know it until you do it. I guess the difficulty spikes. It's just plain difficult, but kind of satisfyingly. Like, as in, so it is. Yeah. It is fully a tactics strategy game. Like, as in, so the Brigand's End situation was a battle where I went into it 3 times. The first 2 times, I was in the battle for an hour each time, and I'd also spent probably about an hour prepping it the first time round. The first 2 times were just an epic fail, where I was like constantly trying to revive my team, and that's another point. If one of your chess pieces dies, it's permadeath. So you are there building and grinding these people up, and you cannot afford to lose a single one. Like, as in, so you're constantly getting around the map with your mage going, I need you back alive, I need you back alive. I've run out of fucking Phoenix Downs. I didn't bring enough Phoenix Downs. This dude's dead. Like, Jeff's fucking dead. And I'm like, oh no, like, I need him back. Like, and it's just like, no. And I'm like, right, just switch it off. Switch the PSP off, switch it back on. You're all right. Start again.
Phoenix Downs, that's what we forgot from the trope discussion.
Yeah.
Bring people back from the dead with a Phoenix Down. Hi, if you're new to Final Fantasy, you're probably about 2 hours in and wondering what the hell is going on. Welcome.
Suffering through with all of us.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I realise you've got a little bit more to go, but did you have any fun playing
that? So I guess I was trying to get at that at the last point to say that it was... and this is what I'm trying to get to, the game of chess almost situation where it's like, it's such a workout for your brain. Yeah. It is like... It doesn't feel like a video game at all. It feels like a real strategy where you're just... it feels like a very in-depth game of Risk against, just some real brainy fucking CPU that's taking you to pieces every time. And you're like, does that arouse you in your brain? If it does, I bet you'd really enjoy this game. Like, as in, so...
Was it this one where they had, like, referees on the battles as well? Or that might be the GBA one or something like that. But there was one as well, I remember, where... not only would you have specific conditions for the battle, but then there would be certain rules you had to abide by as well.
That wasn't in this version, no.
That's probably just as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, just double up. More complexity, please. It's like... And then, so I was going to that Brigand's End situation where the first 2 times took an hour and I failed epically, and it was just trying to get around the battlefield, just trying to keep people alive, and then people were dying, and I was like, fuck. And then also, if your main character, Faz, obviously, which is what it's called, like, as in, at all times.
Better than Clive.
Yeah, well, yeah, everyone's version should have one, Faz the Frolic with his ripped pants. If he died, it was just game over straight away, which is fair. Do you know what I mean? Like, that makes sense. But, the third time I went to the battle, 10 minutes, 10 minutes it took. Wipe the fucking floor with them. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, it just fell that way. It just sort of like, it, for whatever reason, and I took the same tactic in because at that point I thought this will work at some point. It just hasn't fallen that, and it did. It was like, oh, that's so weird. And then the next battle after that one, literally there was 8 enemies, and they barely laid a glove on me. Like, as in, I just destroyed them, and I was like, that's so weird.
Like
like,
galaxy brain.
Yeah, it was just like so weird. But it was just,
I have elevated.
But then I don't think necessarily that in 2 or 3 battles time that would necessarily work either. Like, as in, because you just have to chop and change your party so much, and you need to always be developing everybody in all these different jobs all the time, and you need to be making your onion knights and stuff and things like. You just need to just adding more things all the time and spending most of your time preparing for that next battle. Like, as in, so then on top of this, there's a Final Fantasy story going on. Like, as in, like, so. But as you said in the previous podcast, so this story, it was like the fucking Silmarillion. That one, the fucking Lord of the Rings one, the one that everyone goes, oh, it's really inaccessible at the start. It's like it was just absolute twattish bollocks. That is it. It's just unbelievable how much like Shakespearean, like long names, understanding of what was going on. Like, as in, it was just far too long. Like, the core characters kind of had a little bit of something where you cared about them a little bit, but it's like, oh, we're looking back at a story back in time of something that happened to some people, and now we're shooting forward in time a little bit, and it made not a lick of sense. The good thing is that it just doesn't matter. Like I said, it does not matter at all because you're here for the gameplay, and it's the flip of what I was saying about Final Fantasy IV on the previous podcast, that I was there for the story with that. I felt like I was into the story with that, and then actually it was really bare bones in terms of actual Final Fantasy tactics, whereas this is the opposite completely. You have to understand every single tiny little mechanic to the nth degree. The story just is so superfluous. It really is.
So, something's been bugging me. That character that you renamed Faz, was it Ramza?
Yes, it was.
Was it Ramza?
Well done.
Fucking hell, that's
Yay.
taken me 15 minutes to remember that.
Great work.
Didn't Google it, World, either. That was all me. I was listening as well, but just.
Yeah, well done. I'm really impressed.
Thank you, I feel better now.
Great work. So yeah, I mean, I feel like this game, it just needs to get out its own way a bit more than what it currently does. I mean, I played it for, I think, the same sort of time. I think it was up to like 16, 17 hours or something. But I think it's like 35 hours long. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, is it? But then that's not counting the 30 hours I've put into it where I've just had to just knock the fucking PSP off. Like, as in, so that I've just had to get rid of it. So actually, I've probably played like 40 hours of it. Like, as in, so people are like, oh, how long to beat? I'm like, you talk absolute shit, because actually you have to go wrong and you have to stop people from having permadeath by just knocking the console off. So if it kind of just dropped some of the difficulty, I think, really, like, is in the end of things, and it's just almost like you probably need to cut out like 10 job classes as well. Like, you just don't need them. Like, is in it just. It's almost like really pretentiously showing off. It's like, oh, look how clever we are, and look how many different abilities you can have and stuff. And it's like, oh, all the clever people that get this, and it's just like, what about us dumbasses? Like, it's in they want to play and access it, but you just kind of can't. That all said, I think it's a brilliant game. Like, I really do. I think it's like just genius at the same time. Like, and it is like, if you feel like you want to devote 50, 60, 70 hours to a game and really learn something inside out and craft, like, just and hone that craft. That probably is the kind of Final Fantasy game for you. I would say, rounding off my reviews of Final Fantasy, neither type of Final Fantasy game is necessary for me, which sounds bad, but I have a lot of respect for the series as a whole, and just like with Final Fantasy IV, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 and say that it's a very, very strong game. It just isn't my kind of game. And I tried. I spent a lot of time trying. Too much of my time trying, basically. But yeah, it might have convinced some people to this, play it, or it might convince some people to never go back to it or never start it
Avoid
again.
like the plague.
Yeah. So cool. That's me done. I'm going to sit back, kick back, relax, chillax. Faz the Frolic out. Mic drop.
Nice.
There we go. Who's in? Who's going?
Shall I wade in?
Go for it.
Shall I wade in? So I did Crisis Core Reunion, which is the remake of Crisis Core from the PSP. So I played it on Switch, which inherently nowadays means that it wasn't exactly the slickest experience in the world, but I feel more than did the job, and still playing on a handheld. So it's kind of a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. Looking at my notes here, I've just put, who knows what's happening?
I watched a lot of it and I didn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of allusions to what happens in the main game, a lot of what I think at the time they thought was tying up loose ends, but in actual fact just raises more questions. But good use of Sephiroth and all that good stuff. So well done there. It's got a much more action heavy bent to it. So you have like lots of bite-sized missions, and you'll occasionally sort of travel around a little bit of a map, but for a lot of anything that's away from the main story, it'll almost play more like Monster Hunter, where you'll select a mission from a list, you'll go onto a map, you will travel a little bit, you will hit a couple of things in a couple of different rooms, you'll hit a bigger thing in a bigger room, and that'll be that. And so there is that kind of inherent grindiness to it to get more items or more magic and all that good stuff. But it didn't feel too onerous. Like I didn't feel I had to do too much of it to start making some headway. And if anything, like what was useful about it was that because I pre-ordered it originally, played it a bit, and then finished it off for this. So while I've never rolled credits on any mainline Final Fantasy game, this is the only Final Fantasy game I've ever rolled credits on. But those grindy side missions were really useful for going back in and reminding myself how to play the game.
Yeah.
So they're really good for training, I guess. It looks pretty, but it some of the animations are a little bit wooden. Like it kind of betrays its sort of PSP heritage.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. I think they redid the voice acting for this version, but they didn't redo the script. So it feels like weirdly clunky sometimes and all that, which doesn't help the storytelling, but it kind of does the job, I guess, really. I didn't actively hate it or anything like that. There are elements that you could point at and laugh, but that's part of the fun of it. It definitely plays more into the kind of campy, ridiculous side of Final Fantasy, with villains poncing around, quoting poetry that doesn't exist and all that. Fiona, yes, a question.
Another question, I watched you play a lot of this.
Yeah.
And I agree that I didn't understand what was going on either.
Good.
But it did tick that box for me of like weirdly high concept.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think with some of the ones that I've played and enjoyed but still can't tell you what happened, the reason I enjoyed them because there was just this weird core of belief in whoever was writing it that drags you along. And like,
there's a sincerity.
Your Ponzi characters, and there was all this symbolism with like apples and angel wings and stuff like that. And I'm like, I mean, I wrote a lot about like literature for my degree and I've forgotten it all. And I feel like if I could have accessed that, I might have had a better understanding of what the allegory here was.
Yeah, I can't help but think maybe that's giving it a bit too much credit.
Fine.
But yeah, I take your point.
Was
like,
Cloud
because
in a dress again?
No, it wasn't actually this time. But he does make an appearance and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely feels like it's going for some kind of symbolism and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's one of those things that, it may well be that because this is the remake and all that, obviously the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 is coming up relatively soon. It may well be that, there's some stuff in that ties more directly to it and all that. I think they're meant to be exploring Zack's character a bit more and all that kind of stuff. Zack, the character you play as in Crisis Core. so I think going forward they might be deliberately trying to strengthen its ties to the main story.
Mm-hmm.
But that also might be giving it a bit too much credit. Like, I don't know until it lands. But nonetheless, as its own thing, it's good fun. Like, the combat's entertaining enough. Definitely falls into the kind of Final Fantasy VII Remake vibe. Back in the day, it would have been quite different from the original game. But nowadays, it feels more like it's in line with that. And even Final Fantasy 16. I don't know about the timings exactly, but it does feel a bit like some of the old Final Fantasy VII spin-offs might be responsible for, steering the main franchise to the kind of action route. It feels maybe that was the testing ground for a lot of this stuff.
So was there Vincent's spin-off on the PS2, Dirge of
Cerberus? Yeah.
Was that a Devil May Cry kind of vibe?
I don't actually know, but going
like
from the cover,
yeah.
maybe yes.
It looks like Devil May Cry.
Yeah, it does look quite similar. But yeah, like I think there's an argument to be had. I'm no Final Fantasy scholar, but I do wonder if you looked at the whole lot.
Wait, what are you doing here?
Well, I bought Fiona for that, didn't I? But like I do wonder. But it's bright and breezy, and you can pick it up and all that kind of stuff. And for a Final Fantasy game that has explicit, ties to one of the most famous and beloved games in the franchise, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the combat, you can customize your equipment, you can customize your magic, and that by extension, at least on the remake, means that it kind of varies what spell you put on what button and stuff like that. So if you don't like a particular layout, you can kind of tweak it a little bit and all that. So I'd quite often have my, like a healing spell on one of my shoulder buttons and stuff like that, but that's personal preference. But it was nice to be able to do that. I think the big thing with the combat is you kind of have this, and I wish I could remember what it's called, but I haven't written it down, but you effectively have a slot machine always running in the top left of the screen. And then when that hits certain number combinations, that'll give you a buff or a summon or some kind of special move or something you can do in combat, which is kind of interesting. It does mean that occasionally luck can replace the need to grind and improve your levels to beat a fight one way. You might just get lucky with the level of summons you get, and it's enough to get you through the fight. What's kind of interesting about it is that depending on what items you've got or who you've met in the story, you might have the slot machine kind of skew its results a certain way. Okay. So if you've just had like a big story beat moment, you're potentially more likely to have a move or a buff associated with that character come up. Oh, right, so it kind of ties with the character nicely in that respect. It will quite often give you like a little cutscene as well of an interaction that he's had with this character that's popped up in the slot machines to kind of flesh out the story, and it won't necessarily be one that you have seen previously. So it'll add a little extra context and all that kind of stuff. The only thing is that they happen every time. So like when you see them once, you're like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool. Yeah. When you've seen them like dozens of times, you're just like, you know what, fuck off. I don't care. I don't care.
Just give me my Omni Slash already.
Yeah, exactly. But, like you can skip them. They're not too onerous or anything like that. But it is something that if you are going to settle in for a long time, it can get a bit annoying.
How long do you have to settle in for with this game?
I would argue it kind of depends. Like if you're going in for the story stuff, you can go through in relatively short bursts. I did end up sessioning it a couple of times, but if you've only got, say, a bus ride, you can go into the side missions and quite happily, go in and do one of them for sort of 5-10 minutes kind of thing. So it gives you options. Yeah. Which is great.
It's just interesting because obviously, like you said, the origin of it being a PSP game. Yeah. But I've just spoken about like it wasn't an origin of a PSP game, but it got ported to the PSP, and I was like, it's a similar sort of thing that you kind of like you spent a couple of hours doing a battle, like as in it's almost like you could just go right. I'm going to do one battle today and plan for one battle and prep for it and do that battle. And it's just interesting that, one that originated in the PSP, does it feel like an on-the-go experience that works on the Switch?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's more geared towards that kind of portable vibe.
That's good.
And yeah, like I personally, I appreciated it for that. Sometimes in the combat as well, you might get like some iffy hit detection and stuff like that, but that could quite easily be user error, I guess.
It's not what you said at the time.
Yeah,
It's
could it be though?
Definitely not what I said at the time. But there are some bits where you look at it and you do wonder if there's a bit of a whiff of bullshit about it. But it's whatever. There is one other thing that I wanted to mention as well. Like occasionally over the course of the main story, you kind of get like little set pieces and like mini games to kind of mix things up a little bit. So there's one where you have to say drag Cloud who's injured to safety, but you're getting attacked by soldiers, so you have to have a little fight, drag him a bit, have a little fight, or like protect him, stop him from being dragged, and all this kind of stuff. Or there's another weird one where you have to snipe robots along a path, and so like you go along a path, then you stop, you pick up a rifle, shoot a few targets, move along and rinse and repeat and get your rifle better and stuff like that. And like they are all pretty shit. Like, they're not great. They're variations on a theme, and when they try and stray from the kind of core combat, it's definitely when they're weakest. But that said, I do appreciate the fact that they have tried to mix it up. They've just missed the mark is all. And they don't outstay their welcome, and once you're done with them, you never have to do them again. I don't think they pop up in the side quests or anything like that. I don't remember seeing any of them from the ones that I did do. But yeah, like I had fun with it. I don't begrudge my time with it. I have already exchanged it. I have already got rid of it. Because I don't feel
old boot.
Well, I don't feel the need to go back. And go back into it. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about Final Fantasy VI. I think there's definitely part of me nowadays, and I blame arcade games for this. It's like if I finish it, I feel like I'd never have to see it ever again. So I kind of like Final Fantasy VI for the fact that I've not finished it, because that can I can chip away and I can go back in. But Crisis Core Reunion, I have finished it. It is done.
Yeah.
I know what happens to that character. I knew what happened to that character anyway because I played a bit of Final Fantasy VII. I'm pretty sure most of the people on Earth knows what happens to that character who's been anywhere near Final Fantasy VII. But it's that sort of thing where, yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. I will remember it fondly, but thank you, I am done. So 7 out of 10 from me, I think. Easy. Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that's like... But don't you think that's nice? Like, it's a sign, like, for me, a good Final Fantasy is about the story. That's what makes it different from a random game where you just fight a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
no, that's fair.
Actually, it's quite nice to have that's that story completed.
Yeah, it does feel like closure.
Yeah.
for want of a less wanky word. And like it's the kind of thing that I am genuinely, because I know you'll be playing the Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 when that turns up. So
envious.
But I am now genuinely curious what they might or might not do with that character in that. So yeah, like as a sort of a primer and a way to kind of get a bit more invested in that world again. Yeah, definitely effective. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Nice.
Fiona, what you got?
I cheated. I have brought to your attention Pocket Final Fantasy 15.
Okay.
Which is my Trojan horse to talk about how it compares to Final Fantasy 15. Because I haven't done many spin-offs.
No. So what is the difference between Pocket and the normal version? Like,
Actually, yes.
Oh yeah, well I just thought I'd just little in there. So they do it in the biz.
So do you love Final Fantasy games, and have you ever been like, do you know what? 60 to 70 hours is a bit of a commitment, and also I can't carry the PlayStation anywhere because they're only getting bigger. What if I could put it in my pocket along with my 3 high potions?
Yeah.
That's Pocket Final Fantasy. It's basically A really weird thing, I think. I don't know if this has happened.
Noble experiment.
Well, the reason this is a bit weird is, so Final Fantasy 15, the normal one, came out on PlayStation 2016. And
Wow.
big open world
Retro.
deal. It was the first time they sort of tried open world. They've moved away from that in 16. It's more like Monster Hunter, where you have patches of an open map, but it's very contained and you go back to base and go to a different part.
Yeah.
But 15 was proper. 2016 was the era, wasn't it, where everyone was like, massive
The
open
more
world.
open your world.
Yeah. And they did a lot of very different things with how it worked in general that I'll come to. And then in 2018, this came along, and it, I think initially, was aimed at mobiles. So it was, you could play it on your phone. And it is a condensed down version of Final Fantasy 15. The whole story, as is, original voice actors, just obviously not as massive. And yeah, made for your phone. And then it got ported to the PS4, which is where I've played it, because ain't nobody got time for squinting at a small screen like that for 10 hours.
Yeah.
But it is more like 10 hours rather than the sort of 60 plus you could easily do.
That's cool.
On the full fat version. So Final Fantasy 15, whichever version you're playing, you are the main character, who has the lovely name of, if I pronounce this right, Noctis Lucis Calum.
Oh, what an absolute twat.
Oh, he's lovely, but he is a twat, yeah.
Oh, my boy.
So Noctis is like a proper grumpy teenager. And well, I think he's in his early 20s, but like, you know, sort of slumps around the place, dresses all in black to be edgy, has that kind of classic Final Fantasy hair.
Truly, he is all of us.
The story is he and his 3 friends / I guess also paid staff.
Puts a whole different slant on that story, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, technically they are. So he's got three friends that are basically his party for most of it, and occasionally some of them will not be in it for a bit or whatever. But basically, it's that, and you don't really get the opportunity, like in other games, to switch people in or out. Occasionally, you'll get people who will help you and come along as well, but that's quite rare. There's maybe 1 or 2 notable people who do that, and otherwise it's you and your 3 bros. You've got your big burly literal meat shield Gladio, who's kind of your protector, and also your friend, but I assume on the payroll. You've got Pronto, who is like a skinny blonde guy who likes photography, which we'll come to. Just gonna make a note so I don't forget. And yeah, he is not on the payroll. He's just your best friend, rescued from being an orphan in the empire that you've been enemies with for ages, but raised in your country.
Well looked after, though.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't
paid for effectively is what we're trying to
I think
get.
they were probably just like, he needs a friend.
Emotionally paid for.
And he is like the so I didn't go into this, but Gladio's kind of job is like, you know, big old swords, as you would expect. Pronto's job as such is like, he's such a glass cannon, so his job realistically is mostly being healed by everyone else. But he shoots things from afar, or sometimes uses these big like magitech weapons that are sort of like they look like big chainsaws and things but shoot magic. And then you have my personal favourite, Ignis, who is like insane, but in the best way.
Oh yes.
No, just like
all in.
Just so over the top in everything.
There's no sour patch left.
Ah, no.
Sorry.
Damn it, Ignis.
Well, he could help with that because his role, technically, he's there as the prince's advisor. So even he and Gladio are like kind of only a couple of years older, so they're all early 20s really. Hence the sort of like also being friends. But his job is like to be an advisor, but really in the game
For Sour Patch Kids, yeah?
Yeah, exactly that.
Specifically. Good.
And there is no Sour Patch Kid sourer than Noctis as he grumbles his way through his quests. No, but Ignis's job is like advice, but his battle stuff is mostly daggers and polearms. And that's kind of how the job system works. Everyone can only do one of a couple of things apart from you, and you can do anything you want because you're awesome. But the other brilliant thing that he does, everyone's got like a little skill. So Gladio is something called survival, which I think is to do with camping that I never really figured out. Pronto has the photography skill, which is my favourite thing I've ever seen, but I'll have to come back to it because it's not in the pocket version. And I'll tell you why that's a problem.
I'm going to say that you can't come back
No,
to that.
that's not how it works. But Ignis's other big thing is he cooks for the party. So a lot of what happens is when you're going through this open world, you might end up in a hotel if you're lucky, but actually because it's so open, you often set up camp at these little safe spots that have a cool kind of like, almost like a glowy tribal, like oldie worldy rune pattern. So you know they're a good place to sleep because the monsters come out at night in bigger numbers.
Campsite of the
They always
ancestors.
do.
Not just in the tents.
There was mist at night time.
But yeah, he cooks for you. But when you're picking up random bits and bobs off the floor, like you do in all open world quests, if you pick up things that like mean he can create a new recipe at camp to boost different stats, instead of anything sensible, what he will do is just yell, "That's it! I've come up with a new recipe!" And his voice acting is just like really weird, and it's so funny that we still do it in this house.
We do
today.
occasionally just bellow, "That's it, I've come up with a new recipe."
And
Usually while cooking.
Well, yeah.
Well, there are times where he'll
That's what he
literally,
does.
you'll buy a recipe book because you'll want better stats, and he'll be like, "That's it!" And you're like, "Yeah, Ignis, I know, that's why."
Yeah, that's just happened.
That's what this is for, you idiot.
But he also goes through the whole game dressed in a suit and like dress shoes, which I really admire.
Yeah,
I just
cool.
think that's...
I mean, it's dedication to the bit, isn't
That's
it?
classy. So anyway, that's your kind of cast, and what happens is at the start of this, it's best described the whole plot as like a bachelor party going very, very badly, because you and your mates go off in this snazzy car, and this is also a very big diversion from a lot of Final Fantasies in that it's quite furnished with modern trappings. So you've got a car, you've all got mobile phones, that kind of thing, but you've still got, you know, big clunky bits of armour and flying ships and, you know, all that kind of Final Fantasy stuff as well. And you're off to deliver Noctis to his wedding, to his bride-to-be, who's from a neighbouring thingy, you know, the usual treaty, blah, blah, blah.
Things,
It's
bolts,
implied you love each
got
other
it.
really. Once again, it is the flattest thing ever. There's nothing there at all, but it doesn't matter because she's barely in it. And you say goodbye to your dear dad, the king, and you go off and you settle down at the docks to have a nice kip before you get on your boat. And then wake up in the morning to find your kingdom's been destroyed, your dad's been killed, you've been declared dead, your fiance's been declared dead, the empire next door is moving the fuck in, and you have to start going around all of the teams of your ancestors to gather their magical power and to be able to wield incredible spectral blades, and basically find a way to, I guess, checking on your fiance in about 60 hours time if you can be asked.
Yeah.
When you're done with chocobo ricing.
Ricing!
That's what Ignis does when you get the recipes.
That's it.
It's like me trying to say Silmarillion. Got it! Had to come back. Sorry.
And so basically that's the quest. You got to reclaim your stuff.
It's a classic. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you fall
We've
asleep,
all
your kingdom
been
falls
there.
to fucking bits. Yeah.
Just if I had a penny for every time. But, you know, what's making it worse is also that the knights are drawing in, and you've been told by your dad that you're the chosen king who has a task to bring back the light, and it becomes clear as you go through the game that darkness is getting... You know, it's kind of like as you move into fucking winter, basically.
Winter is coming.
But you're not getting the spring anymore. And there's more and more monsters in the darkness, and you've just got to, you know, bring everything back to rights. It's a great story.
Sold. I'll take one of those.
Do you know, I can't spoil it too much, but there's some really good bits. There are a couple of moments of like real emotion. Some tragedies happen to people that you grow to really care about. It's really great. I would recommend the story. But the pocket version is trying to condense all this into something you can play ideally at first on your phone, right? So how it does this is it makes it like a little chibi version. So, you know, little dinky bodies, big old bobble heads.
I have seen the little thumbnail for it in the shop on Google.
I don't know why you've not bought it. I mean, they're adorable. They were adorable anyway because they're all bumbling idiots who are just best bros with each other, and you just kind of want to pat them on the head because their relationship is so sweet. But yeah, they're very cute. They managed to get a weird amount of emotion into their blank chibi eyes at times. And I was actually impressed at how much of the story they get in. Like, it really does feel like exactly the same story. They keep an awful lot of the same dialogue. The voice actors are clearly the same. So all the key story beats happen. You get a couple of side quests that are a bit optional. Not half as many as you get in the massive open world, which I think is one of my downsides that I'll come to. But actually, there's more in there than I expected. It's more linear. You don't get the open world because it's on your mobile and it would explode in 2018. It'd probably explode now. Mine would. So what you get is kind of funneled through the route quite a lot more. And you do it in little chapters, basically. So you'll do a chapter where you've got a bit of map you're wandering through. The chapters map to the chapters in the main game. And then when you start a new chapter, you just sort of start afresh in this new map and wander through that bit as well. You've got a fixed point camera, which I hated.
Oh, right, okay.
I hated it so much. So what happens when the battles happen is you go into the battle, and the battle mechanics are kind of basic. It's press a button down. They're not much better in the mainline game, if I'm honest, but it's even worse on the phone. But I get that. That's the medium you're working with, and they've not done much more to it on the PS4, which is fair. But when you go into a battle area, you sort of get trapped in a small space, enclosed by little red lines that you can't go out until you've finished killing this thing or getting killed by this thing.
Reminds me of the dinner ladies at school where I couldn't get up until I'd finished my dinner. Like...
Is that goblin really dead?
And one of them's in the kitchen going, "That's it!" I was like, no.
The spaghetti bolognese has given me an idea for a new recipe.
Anywho.
Spaghetti bolognese. La-di-da.
Well, I tried to not have the bolognese bit and they wouldn't let me just have plain spaghetti.
Why is there red lines everywhere?
So yeah, you get trapped in this area, and it's a little bit bigger than is fitting on your screen sometimes. So like, if your enemy wanders off your screen but is still within the area, and you're trying to find it to kill it, sometimes you can't turn around and stab it. You've got to kind of like edge closer and then rely on the auto lock to sort of hope you'll whiz over to it and batter it around the head a bit. So not so great. Character abilities. So your companions in this, you don't really get to tell them what to do that much. But there are a couple of things that you can command them to do. So each of them will have sort of a couple of special talents. You've got a point gauge that racks up. Once you've got a certain amount of action points, you can pick one of your comrades and like say, do that cool thing, and they'll go and do something to sort of make your life a bit easier. And you've got a sort of ability tree that you can level them up on. In the main game it's massive, but actually it still exists in the pocket version.
Okay.
There's still quite a lot you can do with it. Quite a lot of choice. Many more points you could technically put into it than I think I would possibly have got in a run through, which always confuses me. Maybe I'm just bad at the game. But yeah, so you could do a lot more than I expected with the characters on the pocket version, which is really great. But you don't really sense any freedom, so you have lost that from the open world.
Right, okay.
The scenery obviously isn't really scenic because you're plonking through these little polygon chibi scenes, which are pretty, but they're nothing to write home about, I don't think. How long have I got?
You've got like 6 minutes.
Okay, well I've got more to say, but it's not me at a good point.
Okay, that's fine.
So yeah, I think there were points where the sort of graphics went a bit too far in the sort of cutesy chibi thing for me, and really put me off. So there was one bit where you don't really get to do too much with magic in this. It's a lot more streamlined than other Final Fantasies. You've mostly got a sort of electric, fire or ice power.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't have the whole amazing realm of different types of things that you get in a lot of other Final Fantasies. But you can occasionally summon I forget what they're called in this, the big, god things.
Thingies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To save you if you're in a tight spot.
Yeah.
And I summoned on Pocket Final Fantasy Shiva, who's the ice one, and oh my god, it was awful. So Shiva comes down, like big old Shiva, they're always massive, like with a sort of like chibi weird face. I'm like, okay, weird, but okay. And then her power thing was to send loads of baby Shivas
Oh.
who were also chibi and just
Freaking out.
really creepy. Like their eyes were just very blank. It was not cool. Not cool. Losing points for that, I guess. But I guess the story was still good because it was the story, and it did sort of rebalance one thing that 15, the full fat version, didn't really do too well, which was, I still love it, but the plot in 15, you've got this big open world, several chapters of basically bumbling around with your mates, doing a few key quests, but you're still in this big open world, and there's a very clear point in the plot where you basically suddenly remember that you should probably do something about that fiancé who's like halfway over this other side of the world.
Yeah, that thing.
Is she alive? Probably fine.
As soon as we're done paintballing.
And once you start down that track, you're very much railroaded into a narrow. You can't get back to the open world as easily. They open it back up a bit later in sort of a dream form a bit. But you kind of are very much, you're on the main plot now, and you're going to have to progress that. And things get quite serious. Quite
fun.
Quickly. Yeah.
Time to grow up.
Well, that's kind of the thing of that, I guess, as well, is that stuff does get darker as you go down that route. But it's noticeable as a change of pace in the main game. I didn't mind it, but I think I can imagine you might have done if you played more games than I had at that point when I first played it as well. And yeah, the pocket version, because it is all condensed, actually that negates that feeling, because everything is quite
linear anyway.
You do this bit and then you move on to this bit and then you move on to this bit, and you already feel a bit railroaded. So I'd say actually it is a smoother experience if all you cared about was getting through the plot as quickly as possible.
Everything you're saying about the pocket version is everything I want to be happening to me. Railroad me into a game, shorten it right up there. Graphically, throw some cool babies at me. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, as in, that's fine. I'd be totally into it.
No, I mean, I've got a lot of reasons why you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm aware I'm running
out
of time.
A lot of people do for a lot of things a lot of the time. So, would you like to stop there for a second, take a breather?
Yeah, I'm going to need longer than 3 minutes to convince you.
That's fair enough. Okay, right. Break time. Right, we're back. Fiona thinks she's going to convince me to play Final Fantasy 15 full game. It would take a lot, but carry on.
Go.
Okay. So I think Final Fantasy the Pocket version, right, is very good.
My favourite version of all time.
Very good for what it is. I was surprised pleasantly by how much it crammed in there, how true it felt to the original, how, there was still a lot of engagement with the characters. And like I say, I think if you're not of the mind to do a full version, I can see that could be really appealing. Or if you just love the game so much, you're like, I wish I could play this on the tube as well. There you go. But you do lose an awful lot from Final Fantasy 15, the full version. That is just, I think, if you'd just play the pocket version, I think you'd be fine. I think that's, quite a decent game. But I think if you played the original version, you'd be like, oh, there's a lot of stuff that really made that a great game. And I will say that Final Fantasy 15 is not widely regarded as one of the best ones. It's my favourite for a lot of reasons. It was in fact, it was the first Final Fantasy I played.
Yep.
Quite early on in my PlayStationing career as well. So
I
wasn't very good at the
professional
fighting. Well, yeah. This was about the era where we were playing GTA Online, and I had to look up a YouTube video at the same time as trying to get in a heist and learn how to fly a plane.
Oh, getting into a heist was so hard.
But I could hear the YouTube instructional video over the voice chat. I was like, are you checking how to fly this plane on your way to the plane?
No.
It's really sheepish, yes.
We did not do well.
That's when I knew this one was a keeper.
Sorry, internet strangers who I let down.
Oh, we're doing that right now. I don't know if anyone knows. We're doing it again.
So yeah, the version on the PlayStation, but the full fat version, the open world just gives you a lot of stuff that you miss. And I think the reason I love the game, despite now, I went back to it a little bit ahead of doing this. It was like a warm hug. It was lovely. But going back to it now, having played a lot more games, and being a little bit more competent in general, now able to focus at eye level, not just sky, or wherever that shot came from. That classic early gamer conundrum. I think going back, I can see that mechanically it's nothing special. It still has that really cool thing that the more modern Final Fantasies have. The battle looks friggin' awesome. You press a couple of buttons and you are leaping everywhere. You're somersaulting midair. You're stabbing things in the face. Your blade is going 10 to the dozen. It's pretty awesome. In this one as well, you collect these spectral blades of your ancestors, and if you fill up a gauge, you can press a couple of buttons and you hover in the air like it's some kind of fucking thing from The Exorcist, and they all spin round you, and then they sort of batter your opponents, and it's just,
cool.
It's really good. It makes you feel like a badass, which is what I'm here for. But I think the big thing for me was the characters. So it is, really different to the other setups in that you don't have that party option. But I didn't think it mattered, because the characters that you had, you really bonded with, and I think that's the sign of a really good Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, you care about them.
Yeah. And like I mentioned in the one I did on Final Fantasy 16, unlike that, you really notice that your characters are here in the fight scenes with you. They've got these really cool link-up moves where if you time it right, I think at one point I was slinging one of my party members round my pole arm so they could reach the creature quicker to stab it for me and stuff like that. And they're all aerial backflips and whatnot to make you feel really cool. And the bits where you are wandering around the landscape as well, there's quite a lot of dialogue. It does repeat, obviously, but that sort of classic RPG game thing where those bits of dialogue crop up as you're walking around. You'll get things like, what's the one we always quote is if it's a bit warm out and a nice day, maybe one of them will whinge oh, I'm really hot, and the other one will be so take off your jacket. Or be rather sultry.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. And at one point, when I went back to it recently, I had written down at one point in the middle of a battle, one of them just yells at the other, stop bitching and start killing, which is that's the kind of relationship I want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
It's plausible, isn't it?
It's plausible. And a lot of the stuff about when you go to a campsite, there's always this lovely little interlude, which is in the pocket version, but very much reduced, where it's almost like a roundup of the day. You get some kind of meal from Ignis, which if you're very bad at collecting stuff like I was, is mostly flame grilled toast.
Lovingly rendered flame grilled toast.
Lovingly rendered, and he still does a little animation where he does a sort of click with his fingers like he's just thought of something brilliant.
Yeah, then just slaps this bit of bread on your table.
It's like bread, but burnt.
God, that's so it feels like on Pokemon Arceus, I think it is similar sort of thing happens. Yeah. So it's just where it's just it's like a drum roll and wow, when you get your cooking out, it's you look shit. Thanks, yeah, great.
But it's like that, and the idea is that you can tell they're bonding around this campfire, even though you don't necessarily get a cutscene with anything massive happening. If you've been riding your chocobos, you sometimes get a little picture of them sat around the campfire with their chocobos kind of there too. And one of the best bits that
why did I just do that?
Because the chocobos are adorable in this. You can ride them, you can race them. They I know mine Gertrude, she was an incredible steed. When they get really good, I only found this out recently and I'm gutted because I was never good enough to make this happen. If you get to a high enough friendship level with your chocobo, you can also do a link strike with your chocobo, and I googled it earlier and it's incredible. You go and do a little slash at a beastie or something, your chocobo comes screaming into view and kicks it, and then swings itself around, and you gracefully leap onto its back and slash it with your blade before barreling off into the distance. Amazing.
Yeah.
And fun. And the other thing that happens at the campfires that I really love is probably quite divisive. I feel like you're either going to be into this or you're not. But it's Pronto's photography skill. So
quote unquote skill. Quote unquote skill.
So your friend Pronto makes a big deal a lot of the time about photos. There's a couple of places in the world where they're quite nice vistas because it was beautiful, some of the landscapes. And sometimes he'll ask if you can stop and take a photo. You don't have to, but you can. There's a couple of story moments where you take a little photo as well. What you don't necessarily realise until the first campsite is that he is auto taking photos throughout your day. So when you go to the campsite, there's a reel of about 10 photos that you can go through, and you can save any nice ones you like that he's taken. So if you've gone to one of the nice vistas, there'll be a nice picture of all of your mates standing there pulling a face or whatever. But if you didn't take too many of those, there'll just be some random ones, and sometimes they're like of you just in situations that didn't happen when you were playing. Okay. So it might be, you know, in the car, for example. So in the car, you see things kind of from the back and top angle down a bit. Yeah. So, but it might be he's taking a photo of the person driving from the side, or, you know, a bit where you were walking away into the distance and he's taking a photo of you like it's some kind of album cover. And my favourite, Faz, no, it's not even happened yet. The best bit is the battle photos.
You're right, okay.
And the battle photos are absolutely incredible. Sometimes they're just like, because when you do all your cool, you know, magical weapons, or you can also warp to things. So you sort of vanish in midair and like go to where you throw your blade. So sometimes they're just particle effects because it's caught you halfway through doing this. At one point, I'm pretty sure there was a photo of me basically getting gored by something, and the implication is your
click.
Like, whoa, cool dude.
It's like the ones where
help
it's like me, someone's armpit and like the eye of a beast or something like that, or like the really shittily framed ones.
Throw your Polaroid at him,
and the computer can't tell if they're good or not. So what will happen as well is at random points when you're looking through, he'll just say something like, "Oh, one of your friends will be like, great shot, Pronto," and he'll be like, "Yeah, I love the light," and you'll be like, That's
someone's anus.
This reminds me of like Metal Gear Solid 2 when you're in a tank and you just take a random photos of shit, and it's just like, you know, Ottocon's going, you know, well done. Like,
you have an element of control over that. Yeah. That's what's brilliant about this. It's just it's completely random.
You don't. It's fantastic. I love it. I think what I love about both this and the Pocket one really is that this is fun. It's a fun Final Fantasy. They build it as it's meant to be, specifically for beginners to Final Fantasy as well as fans. And they've done a load of little nods to other Final Fantasy games. So if you know, you know. So again, one of Pronto's special moves, I'm pretty sure he yells out, "I never miss," which is a thing that somebody in Final Fantasy 12 does for one of their special moves. It's like a callback. If you don't know it, it doesn't matter. So it's quite good at that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The fighting is, again, it's like action fighting rather than inputting a load of commands and waiting. And it's familiar, but you still have some of the beats, and you still have like elemental weaknesses, which Final Fantasy 16 downplays a lot.
Oh, really?
Sometimes you will notice
that's how I win.
No, well, exactly.
You're a fish! Lightning!
Yeah, exactly. If you can't go back and get, you know, holy to like kill this undead thing.
Oh yeah, what's the point? Yeah.
How are you going to do it? So it's nice to have those. There's also weaknesses to certain weapons. So, you know, you can be like, "Oh, swap out a pole arm for daggers or whatever." So that's a nice touch. And I just think the thing that really wins me over is how much you go to care about the characters as you go through it. And like I mentioned in the other episode, the side quests are uniformly pretty stupid. But because you love the characters so much, you will go and do them. There was one that I did that is the most poorly hidden advert I've ever seen in any...
For Marlboro?
No, that would have been good, wouldn't it? Smoke this! But no, it was for cup noodles.
Oh.
And you bump into a cup noodle vendor and suddenly all of the bros start talking about, like, you know, how much they love cup noodles, and they all argue about what their favourite cup noodle is. And then you have to go on a quest to create an epic cup noodle by bringing down some kind of mega beast to put in the cup noodles.
So weird.
It's so weird. And they also had this the DLC for the main one as well. Obviously you don't get DLC in the Pocket version, but the DLC is some of the greatest DLC I've ever seen for anything. I'm massively biased, but it's amazing. So,
but you're massively biased because you love it though, like, isn't it?
Yeah, I do.
You keep on stopping to sort of say, oh, you know, like, as in, like, almost like you feel bad for reviewing it so well or like caring about it so much, but you don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just because other people say it's shit. I'm genuinely extremely interested in what you're saying about like all the quirkiness of it, and it sounds so different that's not, you know, it doesn't sound like a bad thing at all to me.
Yeah.
Fucking more cup noodles, please. Like in Final Fantasy.
Quirky's the word though, from what I've seen, and like for my part, what because I've been in the same room as it being played quite a lot.
What's going on?
Who are these people on my TV? But like, I think what I appreciate in a good Final Fantasy game is that feeling that that the characters like know each other.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds stupid, but like, you know, they are that band. And like with Final Fantasy VI, like when you at one point you have an airship and you can go in and you can switch your party members, but they're all hanging out like on the airship.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the impression that, you know, you've got, okay, I need you and you right now. You go off and do a thing, but you know they've stayed on the airship, and your brain just fills in the blanks, and like, well, they're probably talking, they're playing some of the games on it, they're hanging out or whatever. And between that and some of the writing, it makes a huge difference when you come to some of the big fights. And I think, like, to go back to what you've said before about like Final Fantasy 16, you just don't get that with some of those characters. And I think for me, what makes a great Final Fantasy game are those interactions. And Final Fantasy 15 is really good at giving time to that incidental bullshit that like has zero bearing on the main plot, but gets you invested.
And there's one. I'm not even sure if it is a side quest. I was trying to remember if you had to do it or not. But when you finally decide you should probably go find your fiance, you go to this lovely place. It's like a sort of weird Venice kind of vibe, with this massive waterfall, kind of like an arc around the city, and it's just awesome. But then before you go find her, for some reason, you all decide that you need to go and look at the wedding dress she's going to wear that's by Vivenne Westwood and is on display. So you and these 4 hulking blokes, all dressed in like various shades of black leather, all go up to this Vivenne Westwood dress and just stand there for a little while. But then again, like, it got under our skin so much that when we were in Japan and we found a Vivenne Westwood shop in Tokyo in a subway station, we were stood outside laughing, and the lady had to sort of come and chase us off.
Yeah. Bellowing, that's it, and all that. Like, yeah.
But do you think it's like, it's almost, is that like a translation thing where it's like the people in the West will love this? Like, it's almost like
the product placement is weird, but they did again with the DLC stuff. And I'm not sure how many things have done stuff like this where it's a weird crossover. But one of the DLCs that was great, and I'm so gutted it was only a temporary thing, was an Assassin's Creed DLC for. What's the one where we've got the Origins, the Egyptian-y one?
Yeah,
because it came out about the same time. So again, you're under this pressure, like, you know, your kingdom's in ruins, the empire's invading, you're not sure if your fiancée is alive or dead, and you're getting messages from her magical dogs, so you know she's probably okay, but you should go and sort that at some point.
You know, who wouldn't send them that via that, you know, really important mail system?
And you're like, but we could go to the festival, because me and my best mate Pronto really like video games, and this one's our favourite. So you go and you dress up as fucking assassins, and it's brilliant. You can do the little jump of faith thing off the tower, and your characters are having a great time. There's even a joke in the DLC, because presumably they cottoned on to at least the English-speaking version how ridiculous everyone thought Ignis's like accent was.
Yeah.
So there's one bit where you sit down with one of your other friends and have a little snack, and the other one just goes, "That's it!" and like does the little thing, and it has fun in a way that
it's good for it to be so knowing.
Just doesn't at all, and that's kind of what I want from my Final Fantasy.
Multiplayer as well, didn't it?
Oh, so
Final Fantasy 15.
Well, the other DLC,
not a great one.
No, the multiplayer wasn't. I didn't enjoy it much because, again, I love the characters and they're not in the multiplayer because you're your own character. But it's basically the multiplayer is basically a bit of time where you and your party are off in another part of the map doing other things, and it's like, what's everyone else doing? Like more normal people and hunters and things who are trying to keep the rest of humankind going as the darkness closes in.
Yeah.
While the main characters save the world, which is a good concept, but I wasn't as into it because the engagement wasn't there. But to finish my DLC rant and let you guys go to bed.
I only mentioned the multiplayer because I think for me that highlights what you were saying about how mechanically the game itself wasn't great. Because as soon as you take the characters away from it, like you do in the multiplayer, that multiplayer fell really flat.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
I mean, it just sounds like a completely different team has built this game compared to what's been previous almost. Like, do you know what I mean? It feels like a real palate cleanser.
Well, you said that, though.
Whilst people might not have reviewed it very well necessarily in general on the whole, like I like the sound of it. You know, I think it sounds like it's really cool. It's
something a bit different, but I think thematically, it carries on a lot of the core stuff, right? Is that fair?
I think if you were a hardcore old school Final Fantasy fan, and you were in love with the, you know, for example, the hardcore elemental magic, or being able to tell your party exactly what to do, you'd be like, this isn't a Final Fantasy. And I think for some people that's where it fell thin.
Yeah.
I think for what it was trying to do, I think it nailed it. I think it gave you enough Final Fantasy to be like, this is definitely it. But if you were completely new like I was, you could be like, I'm into this, but I didn't have to deal with terrifying menus of job options and
Neoformed
60 hours of grinding
and
and I think, I don't know, it was just a really nice game. The only points I take off it really are for some very sad bits that happened at various points that I got very upset about. But one of the DLCs kind of follow your companions a bit more at times where they're not in the main party, and fills in some gaps, and it's great, like nice character development. But you crucially in one of them, once you've played the DLC through once, you can go back again, and it gives you like a fix-it ending where stuff works out a bit better for somebody that you might want it to. So if you were disappointed by what happened, you can go back and just imagine that was kind of the real
nicer thing.
It feels like someone somewhere like has been a bit like, this is a bit more Final Fantasy, we'll put this little shitty ending in. And it's like, and you're like, oh, this feels really nice and happy. And, oh no.
Too much. So yeah, I think all in all, I think it is a really good game, whichever version of 15 you play. If you're not convinced about Final Fantasy, but you like a good game with action where you get to feel like a bit of a boss, and really good characters that you care about, I think it's a really good one to go in at. Technically, I'm reviewing Pocket Final Fantasy,
and that will be the score that you give.
there's no photography, fewer recipes. In fact, no recipes. Oh, the DLC! I forgot to tell you. One of the best things the DLC does is allow you to switch between characters, so you can then swap over and take over any of your companions and do their moves. But the best thing about this is that it gives Ignis a move which is called Quick Recipe, and in the middle of battle you can just calmly set up a camping stove and cook something that will produce a random stat buff.
Cool, that's awesome.
But it's the fun that I was missing from 16. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, so if that's a turn off, don't do it. But Pocket Final Fantasy, which lacks all the bells and whistles, I'm going to give a solid 7 out of 10. I think for what it is, it's very good, and if that is the only way I'll get you to play it, I recommend you do it. But obviously my real recommendation is 15 full fat, which is 9 out of 10. That didn't sound like an official score, did it?
It's all right. We need to decide what we do in the spreadsheet.
Your husband has put it in there. I can see
going
it.
in the books.
Although, to be fair to him, it's in pencil,
No,
so
that was you writing it in.
Oh, right,
halfway through this
okay.
episode, wasn't it?
No, I think, you know, as a guest who lives in this house and lets me come in, but also the fact that you've put so much time and effort and love into that, I think we'll talk about it. We'll talk whether or not it's okay to put in the spreadsheet. I think. You know, under consideration is fair, right?
It's only the reason that we ended up walking down the aisle to the Final Fantasy prologue tune. So if you don't feel that is worth position in your table,
the emotional blackmail.
Have you not listened to any of the previous podcasts? I do not think it's worth anything. No, there you go. That's because I'm a shit.
I will say though, to round it off.
Oh no!
No. Well, this is what happens. If you look, it's lucky you didn't get me on for Ace Attorney, or we will still be here.
Oh, that's where I thought this was going.
No.
In fact, Final Fantasy 15 sounds like Phoenix Wright's version of Final Fantasy. It's like...
That's why I love it so much. But the other thing that I love about 15, and a couple of other Final Fantasies, the music's great. And when you said earlier that they didn't get a lot of the same people on, perhaps, I've got no idea if that's true. The music, they definitely made a point of bringing back one of the OG Final Fantasy score writers. The music is so over the top, it's incredible. One of the main battle songs is just them shouting Noctis's name in loads of fake Latin in a really operatic tone. I listen to it a lot, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fun.
No, I recommend it. Have a look.
I'm genuinely. I think you have kind of convinced me that I want to at least check out the pocket version. I mean, although then you'll be like, but you should really check out the full fat version.
It's super cheap these days, and if you get the royal version with all the DLC, you're sorted.
Yeah, I think I'm sure it's floating around on Game Pass or something or other that I've seen for next to nothing. So yeah, I might be, there's been a lot of endurance through these Final Fantasy games, I feel like, in December. And I feel like, maybe that would be something to sort of still be Final Fantasy, but cleansing the palate a bit. So, I think that we probably don't need to talk about any more Final Fantasy necessarily. I am absolutely shattered thinking about it all. Like, what a weird series. I just... the amount of time that people around the world must have invested in this series, it's just.
Oh, there's a fucking convention in Birmingham that I'm seriously toying with going
really?
to for the giggles.
Yeah,
like
that sounds great.
But like as a series that's like lasted as long as it has, but also like had as many iterations.
Yeah,
and
that's
like,
exactly what I was trying
kind
to get
of
to.
willingness to experiment. It's not like the fucking Bond franchise or whatever that always seems to rehash the same stuff until something comes along that, actually decides to try and do something different. Like Final Fantasy goes in willingly every time, trying to put a new spin on it. It's great.
Every different generation of console, that is in, and like some people might accuse them of being a little bit money grabbing, sort of saying, well, do you need to do Crisis Core Reunion, for example, and stuff? But it kind of feels like, from what we've discussed, you do almost that it definitely feels a bit justification of having a pocket version of Final Fantasy 15. They seem to offer something different every single time, which is great. So
I don't think you can fault them for trying. Like these things aren't always going to land. Of course they're not, but you can't fault them for trying. And like we've demonstrated with Final Fantasy 15, I would argue it just goes to show that even some of what are regarded as the worst entries will have someone who loves them for very good reason.
No, I think there is probably a Final Fantasy for everyone because there are so many different ones, and I think what I like about it most as a series is that, generally speaking, with the exception of 16, they kind of commit to whatever they're doing and aren't afraid to go a little bit OTT with it, and they aren't afraid to do something a bit different with their IP as well, which you really don't see with a lot of franchises. Like, what you're getting if you go to see James Bond or Harry Potter. But Final Fantasy, you might meet someone named Sid who might help you, but beyond that, and apart from the sort of big hair, big sword thing, you're probably flying a little bit blind, which is quite cool.
Yeah, and it does mean that like I can go in and go like, oh well, I like 6 because it's all steampunky and all this, and you'll like 15 because there's recipes and insanity.
So, segueing from something that sounds like one of Fiona's guilty pleasures to play with gaming, next time we are talking about our guilty pleasures, or...
Are you asking me, or are you
I am asking you, yes. Yeah.
Because it means that I don't have to play anything for it.
Yeah, maybe
I can just tell you.
Maybe we need a little time off actually gaming and just talk about gaming.
Go outside for a bit.
So, join us for that next time, guys. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.